RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, brought to you by Species Nutrition and by Liquid Sun Rays. I'm your host, Heath. This is your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions on diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros, competitions. Of course, we are just returning from the Olympia weekend, and that's where we'll jump right into Dave. An exciting weekend with a lot of turnover, and of course the big headline, Shawn Rhoden, your new Mr. Olympia.
Always great to go to an Olympia when the Olympia champ loses, because it's plenty to talk about, plenty to speculate about, and of course it always sets up the following year, especially if the guy's going to come back and try to, get the title back as the rematch, so to speak. And I think once other competitors see that the Mr. Olympia has lost, it almost like sends a message like the door is wide open here. Hey, we're open to getting a new guy in place. Even though Shawn Rhoden is now the existing Mr. Olympia, I think people feel like he hasn't really cemented that title yet, and it'll take another victory next year to do that. Don't be surprised if we see guys come out of the woodwork, maybe Flex Lewis jumping into the Open next year, maybe a Kai Green comeback, and these are things that we speculated when I interviewed Shawn Ray on the show last night. So I think that, once again, I think it's good for the sport. Change is always good, and it always kind of freshens things up. We had new champions in a lot of divisions. Brandon Hendrickson won in men's physique. The vacated title in the fitness division was won by Whitney Jones. And Flex Lewis is retiring this year. So there's going to be a lot of turnover over the next 12 months, and I think that's going to lead to a lot of excitement in sport. Shanique Grant in women's physique, obviously, also taking the vacated title by Juliana Malcarney. So I think that the sport is going through a little bit of a renaissance.
So much content right now at RxMuscle.com and the YouTube channel from this past weekend, and then so much to unpack. Yesterday we had Shawn Ray. I know a lot of people saw that headline and thought it was some sort of a typo or some sort of a fake clickbait, but no, we actually did have Shawn Ray. It was a great discussion between he and Dave. Dave, of course, responding to Phil Heath's comments about RX Muscle at the post-Olympia seminar. That too live right now at RxMuscle.com and at the YouTube channel.
People seem
Dave,
to
were you
like.
gonna say something? Yeah.
People seem to like the passive-aggressive relationship that Shawn Ray and I have. That that we don't like each other, but we can still sit down and we can still hash it out. And so I think that was that's a good dynamic that exists there. Also, coming up this week, the much anticipated Big Lenny spotting we had at the Olympia Expo. That interview will be going up, and Big Lenny has some training tips for Big Ramy. So there is speculation that Big Ramy may be moving his headquarters from Kuwait Oxygen Gym to Big Lenny's house. A lot of people have been saying that Big Ramy is living too high and mighty. He has to get back to his roots, kind of a la Rocky, in Rocky 3. I think Big Ramy may be moving into Big Lenny's house for the next year's prep, and living, like Big Lenny lives, with a little bit of dirt, but not too bad, right? It's not too dirty. And I think that might, get him hungrier for the title.
And then, of course, we ran into Dr. Tony Huge on the way out of the expo, I believe day one. So that interview around the corner as well. Again, a lot of video content from this past weekend. Hope you enjoyed it. And again, we thank Redcon One for sponsoring our coverage of the 2018 Olympia. Let's get to the questions. The first two questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, the first question, any crazy Olympia stories you haven't shared yet from a behind-the-scenes view? So I'm guessing they mean from all of your Olympia experiences.
Yeah, well, probably the press pass situation was probably the most aggravating, but we got that, in the end, we got it sorted out. It was funny. I'll tell you one story. I was given a VIP ticket to get into the show because there was a mishap with the press pass, one of the press passes. And I was trying to get in through the VIP entrance, and I had my computer bag, and they're like, they check, to make sure you don't bring any weapons or whatever in with you. And I opened my bag, and they're like, oh, you can't bring this camera equipment in with you. I said, well, I'm not filming the show. I'm filming after. I'm doing video stuff, and I do play-by-play on my computer. They're like, well, you're not press. I'm like, I am press. They're like, well, you have a VIP ticket. I said, what does it matter what my ticket is? I'm press. You go look at the press credential list. I'm on the press. I just don't have a lanyard with me because for whatever reason, my photographer got there too late and couldn't get one. And so they wouldn't let me in the door with my computer bag. So I sat down like Martin Luther King, in front of the door, and I was passively not moving. And they were like, look, you can't do this. I said, look, I'm going in with my stuff. How am I going to cover the show? And Mac Truck, we know Mac Truck, who's a good friend of mine now, he stepped up to the plate and started yelling at them. You know who this guy is? He's one of the main press guys. He's got to bring his stuff in. And then all these other people started yelling. Like all these other fans started yelling. Let him in! Let him in! And I thought it was really funny. And I thought there was going to be a riot at the front door there. Finally, one of the senior security guys, he realized that it was getting out of control there, for no reason whatsoever. And he took me in a back way and got me to my seat. But thank you, Mac Truck, thank God someone stands up for me in this industry, Someone opened their mouth up in favor of Dave Palumbo. So thank you, Mac Truck.
Second question again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, what is the best anti-inflammatory to take that won't cause effects in muscle gain? I'm suffering from severe tendonitis.
Bromelain is a really good anti-inflammatory. Curcumin is really good. These are all herbal anti-inflammatories that shouldn't really affect that signal that tells the muscles, the inflammatory signal that tells the muscles to build yourself bigger. Remember, there's two types of inflammatory. The acute inflammatory response, which is you work out, you break down muscle tissue, you create inflammation. That's the signal for your body to repair muscle. And then there's the chronic inflammatory response, which is always going on. That's what we want to get rid of, that chronic inflammation that's causing the tendonitis and that type of stuff. Now, if you take ibuprofen or things that are similar to that, you'll get rid of the inflammation, but you get rid of all the inflammation, which is not good. And that's why these non-steroidal anti-inflammatories can, while they get rid of the pain, they can also inhibit muscle growth. But it seems like these herbal ones are better, more targeted. Once again, I like the curcumin, is really good, and it seems to only kind of reduce chronic or excessive inflammation in the body. They did a study on older people, and they found that older people who tend to have more inflammation in their body actually did better on like non-steroidal anti-inflammatories than younger people, and they actually, it helped alleviate pain, and they still were able to repair muscle and build muscle, and it didn't affect that because they had such excessive amount of inflammation that even cutting it back 50% made it that much better. So, but in younger people, I would kind of try to steer clear. I mean, once in a while, if you got to take some ibuprofen, it's not a big deal, but on a regular basis, I wouldn't use them.
Let's go to some of our Instagram questions. I'm looking for some Olympia-related questions. We have a lot of them. The first one, a good one from Big Daddy Jensen. It's a question that a lot of people had on their minds following Shawn Rhoden's win. Do you think that Shawn Rhoden's win at this year's Olympia represents a shift in the judging criteria for the sport moving forward?
No. And I'll say it, a million times over. The judges judge what's up on that stage. What that means is that who's ever there, that's all they can judge. They don't change, hey, you know what, this year we're not going to vote for guys that have, big, that are over 250 pounds. No, what they do is they judge what's up there. That's why you can go from Jay Cutler winning one year to Dexter Jackson winning in 2008 and then back to Jay Cutler winning again because he came back better the next year. They judge what's up there. Big usually wins on the Olympia stage, but when Big is not good because it's not in shape, or it doesn't look aesthetically correct, then sometimes smaller physiques win. Phil Heath is a tweener. I've said this before. He's not a huge mass monster. He's not a shape guy. He's got a little of both. The problem is that he's got a small structure genetically. So when he gets too big, as he's been getting progressively over the years, it's ruining his shape because his waist is getting thicker too, but he doesn't have the width structurally, bone structure-wise, to hold that much mass. So he's getting blocky looking, and his as his midsection gets a little thicker, he loses that taper from the front. So, and he still looks great, don't get me wrong, he's Mr. Olympia, but this year, I guess, because he had distension issues in his stomach, he wasn't able to pull it, his conditioning wasn't great, he was flat in the prejudging, he was too full at night, it just didn't look good. And who's left? Romney wasn't there, he was out of shape. Dexter was really flat and added the money. William Bonac was not his best. Really, the best guy out there was Rulli Winkler, size-wise. You could make an argument for Rulli winning the Olympia if you want to, but Shawn Rhoden has structure. He had tremendous conditioning. He's got enough size to stand up there with anyone on that stage, and that total look is what won him the Olympia. If he would have looked the way he did last year, he wouldn't have won the show because he didn't have the conditioning last year that he had this year. So he put it all together. He brought it all on the right day at the right time, and that's what winning the Olympia is all about. It's about being right at the right place at the right time. Dexter did it in 08. He was in shape. He was great. There was nothing you could really criticize about him. And Jay was off, so he won. So you got to understand that the judges can only pick people who are on stage with them. Next year, Rami might be amazing on stage, and he might win the Olympia because he'll be big. Then he'll beat Shawn because he's bigger than him. But until that happens, Shawn's Mr. Olympia right now.
Question about Phil from Faraz Hibachi. Can Phil take time off and decrease the size of the gut? If so, how? And can he come back and win his title back? I know it was one of the questions that you asked Shawn Rhoden in his post-show interview.
Well, I have some ideas. Phil doesn't want to even interview with me, so he probably won't entertain my ideas. But I definitely have some ideas about him fixing that midsection a little bit. And it involves my detox program and some of my techniques that I've developed over the years. Maybe I'll just send it anonymously to him, and he can do what he wants with it. Or maybe I'll do a video on it. I don't know. Might be an interesting rant video. I think that if he fixes some of these issues, gets the midsection under control, he can certainly come back and challenge to get his title back. I think he needs to be very conscious of it. When you're younger and everything kind of just stays together and your skin is tight and everything like that, you don't have to be as conscious on stage. But now that Phil has an issue with the midsection, he has got to be completely focused on that area at all times when he's on stage. He can never relax that area. I had a very similar problem. And it's nerve-wracking because you can't just relax up there. You have to constantly be aware of pulling your stomach in and controlling it. Because people now are targeting that. That's what they're looking for when Phil's up there. So while it is nerve-wracking, it can be controlled. And if he works on certain exercises to control that thing, he won't have any problems. Do I think he can win the Olympia again? I absolutely do. Do I think he will? Who knows? If he comes back the same way and tries to come back bigger, or tries to come in too streamlined, which is not going to work for his physique, which are the two extremes, he's going to get beat again. He's got to come back with a real strategy to win this thing back. I think he definitely will come back. I think his ego is hurt that he lost, and he wants redemption. So I definitely think we'll see him back on that stage. Shawn Ray doesn't think so, but I do think so.
Shawn Ray was pretty adamant yesterday, saying that he could see him retiring, correct? At yesterday's episode?
I don't think so. I don't think he will. I don't think he has as much money saved as Shawn Ray thinks. I think that, he has probably a nice bank account full, but, money disappears really quickly when you don't have any money coming in. So until Phil starts developing some new businesses where he's making really good money, which I know he will. Look, he's a 7-time Mr. Olympia. I just think it's probably in his best interest to compete over the next at least 2 years to try to, at least keep himself relevant, make some money on stage, create some more opportunities for himself. And then after that, within, maybe when he hits 40, which is in the next 3 years, maybe he can say, all right, I had enough and pull out. But at this point, I think he's still in his prime, and I think he just needs to fix a few things.
The Atomic Beast. At which Olympia do you think the crowd went more crazy when the winner was announced? 2006 when Jay Cutler won, or 2018 with Shawn Rhoden?
No doubt, Cutler. People had wanted to see Cutler win for years, and Ronnie was winning. And he probably should have won the year before. He beat Ronnie, and Ronnie was a little off, and they kind of gave it to Ronnie. The place went nuts when Jay. No one left. No one left the place. Jay gave a speech for 30 minutes probably, and not one person left that arena. So while I think people were happy for Shawn Rhoden, I think that Jay was a more popular. He's still popular. Jay was just a popular champion. He might not have had the best physique of all time, but he was probably one of the more popular bodybuilders. People just wanted to be around Jay. He's got a lot of charisma.
We will be taking some more Olympia-related questions, but let's move off that for a second. Buff Bonner, thoughts on cyclical bulking Would you say it's a good idea to do mini cuts during a long bulk? How big, quote, fat is too big?
You don't want to get fat when you're trying to put on size, and if you do get fat, you can cut your carbs back, but that doesn't mean you should be dieting. Here's the problem. Let's say you get up to 280 pounds, and the second you get to 280, you start like doing a mini diet, and you cut down to 260. You haven't solidified those new gains yet. You're going to lose them. They're bound to, some of those muscle gains are bound to disappear. Because once you cut the resources off, you cut how much food you're consuming down, now your body hasn't really solidified those gains. It might use some of that muscle, that new muscle it built, for fuel at a later date, because it's not really solidified. For your body to change its set point, what the weight it feels comfortable at, it takes months and months. So the longer you can hold this new weight, the more permanent the gains will be. Ask any guy who's been like 280 to 300 pounds. Say to them, later in their career when they lost weight, how long did it take you to lose the muscle? It doesn't disappear very easily. It took me 10 years to get off all that muscle. I think in 2004, I was down to about 260, and it took me, so how is that? In 14 years, it took me to get from 260 down to 190. Okay, so that's 70 pounds. It took me 14 years to lose 70 pounds. It doesn't happen that fast, and believe me, I stopped eating. I don't train as heavy, mostly from injuries, but it doesn't disappear, the muscle, so quickly. So, and that's because I had it on my body for so long. However, if I would have done what I did now, right after I got to 280 for the first time, I would have probably lost 40 pounds in the first 8 weeks, if I stopped eating. So you got to force your body to solidify the gains, and then your body holds on to them more easily. Women don't lose muscle as easily as men either.
Jay Warchild, Dave, I've noticed it takes me about 15 minutes on the treadmill to get my target heart rate to burn fat. But if I take a pre-workout, it takes a lot less time to get there and less effort to stay at my target heart rate. Question is, am I still burning the same amount of calories but with less effort by taking a pre-workout before cardio?
But if you take a pre-workout or a cup of caffeine and a cup of coffee, and your heart rate goes from 100 beats a minute to 130 beats a minute, and you're just sitting down watching TV, do you really think you're burning that many more calories? No. Just the fact that your heart is beating faster because you're on a stimulant doesn't do anything. So the target heart rate means nothing. My question I always ask any class I ever give, whether it be my SMART training class or my guru course, I always ask people this question: when do you start burning fat? How many beats per minute? And people always throw these numbers out there. 30% of your heart rate, max heart rate, 120 beats, 15. And the answer is always wrong. You're always burning fat. Sitting here talking to you right now, I'm burning fat. Okay? How much do we need to augment, the pace of your movement to increase how much fat we're burning? Well, the real question is, when do we stop burning fat and start burning carbohydrates as a fuel source? That's more important. That's usually, and once again, it varies on your age, it's usually around the 135 beats per minute mark. Now, if you've taken tons of stimulants, that completely throws that modicum of measurement off. Because I know, I once walked into the gym and one of my clients that was on the treadmill, and they were walking like in slow motion like this, literally. I said, "What are you doing?" I'm doing cardio. I'm like, "Why are you going so slow? You're not burning anything." Of course, you told me don't go over 135 beats a minute. I said, "Your pulse is 135 beats a minute." I said, "What'd you take before you got here?" "Oh, I took coffee and a Red Bull, and I had a pre-workout." I said, "Well, your heart rate is artificially elevated. It's not elevated because you're exercising." I said, "You're not burning any fat doing what you're doing. You look like an idiot." And so now I try not to tell people heart rate. I try to tell them, look, get on the treadmill, walk around 3.2 to 3.6 miles per hour. No matter what your heart rate is at that point, you're burning fat. You're moving very fast. It's a fast walk. That's usually adequate. So there's no way to really, stimulants have no really effect on how much you're going to burn fat, other than they're going to wake you up a little bit. Okay, so if you're doing stimulants, using your target heart rate, is probably not going to really give you an accurate assessment of what you need to be at. Like I said, get on the treadmill, 3.2 to 3.6 miles per hour, you'd be fine.
Let's go to Caper Inc. 412. I've been a type 1 diabetic for 20 years. My question is, I know for a fact that with insulin, It causes fat growth. I've been slow metabolism my whole life. I've been overweight and started lifting about 22 months ago. Went from about 32% body fat. I'm down to about 11 to 12% body fat. I'm having a hard time cutting, even with a calorie deficiency, because of the gear that I take. I've sometimes had to take more insulin. Other than no carbs, what else can I do from taking less insulin with the gear I take?
You know, insulin management in type 1 diabetic is really tough, and I've done interviews with Colette Nelson, obviously, who's a pro bodybuilder, and she's a certified diabetes educator. And having a tight blood sugar control is really important. Most diabetics who are really concerned about their health would overtake insulin, meaning they take too much insulin, they go low a lot because they want to keep their blood sugars tight. And when you take too much insulin, obviously, it's very hard to burn fat. That's why my ketogenic diet works really well with diabetics, because their insulin requirements are so low that it's very easy to figure out how much you need. Because if you're eating no carbs at every meal, you need very small amounts of insulin just to kind of account for the protein you're eating. And then you need your long-acting insulin to take care of the overnight, the gluconeogenesis that's going on. Much easier to keep control over, rather than every time you eat a meal where you have to figure out, all right, I'm having 50 grams of carbs, I need 5 units of insulin here, and I need to take that's a lot more, that's a lot more complicated. So you can do two things. You can cut your carbohydrates way back, like you had suggested, originally. Or if you're going to eat carbohydrates, don't eat excessive amounts of them, and just try to really tightly control your blood sugar. Try to more precisely do it. Colette talked about also a new insulin just came out. It's called Afrezza. It's an inhaled insulin. If your insurance will cover it, it's better really, because you can kind of it instantaneously hits you. So you can kind of, it's almost like having real insulin released. You kind of know exactly what you ate. You take a whiff of the stuff and it drops your blood sugar the way it should. So, and supposedly it suppresses another hormone known as glucagon. Glucagon is the other hormone that's produced by the pancreas that does the opposite of insulin. Insulin stores glucose as glycogen in the muscle. In other words, it brings the glucose into the muscle. Glucagon mobilizes stored glycogen as glucose into the bloodstream. When people take insulin shots, type 1 diabetics, they have very high glucagon output for some reason. And the glucagon is always raising blood sugar. So in other words, it's taking all that stored glucose and it keeps pushing it into the bloodstream. And every time it does that, you need more insulin. So you wind up having to take extra insulin, which is what leads to the weight gain. So these are things that you can avoid with a drug like Afrezza, because it shuts down glucagon production. There's also other compounds called GLP peptides that you could take that they sell now for diabetics that will also keep the glucagon output down. I advise, if you're a type 1 and you're interested, you should contact Colette at colette@msm.com. Tell her I sent you. She can help you manage your blood sugars.
Let's go to Yvonne or Ivan Banjanak. Dave, I love your show. Can you give me some tips on how to do a depletion and a carb up the safest way so I don't mess something up? I'm 20 days out of my first show, and I'm doing 80 grams of carbs on my training days, 0 on rest days. I'm around 200 pounds right now, 6'1". I'm planning on losing another 10 pounds before my carb up.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving me a homework assignment here. This is something I'd have to sit down and calculate. I have to see pictures of you, determine how many grams of carbs I think you need over how many days, and this is something I would customize for you. I do a lot of these last week preps. I probably have done 50 of them in the last 2 months or something for guys that have heard me talk about that. I charge $100, 10 days out. You send me your pictures, exactly what you're eating and doing, and I map out everything, exactly what you do. Every day we communicate with each other a couple times a day sometimes, to make sure that we peak you for the show. This is a very customized process. It's very hard for me to give you a blanket statement on what you should or shouldn't do. Some guys need 300 grams of carbs a day. Some guys need 600 grams. Some guys need 150 grams of carbs a day. Some people need to carb up for 3 days. Some people 2 days. Some people 1 day. It really is very variable according to what you look like and what kind of a metabolism you have. And that's why it's very hard for me to give you a blanket statement of what you should do or not do. The best advice I can give you, if you can't afford to hire someone to help you out with the last week, and once again, once you go through the last week once, it kind of gives you the idea of how to do it in the future. Conservative. You're better off doing too little than too much. That's the best general advice I can give you.
Data995, is melatonin harmful in the long run? I have trouble sleeping.
No, melatonin is a great natural substance, a natural hormone that's produced in your body that they actually allow you to sell. I have a product called Somalize. It's a nighttime fat burner that also contains GABA and melatonin. The reason I combine those two is because GABA is like taking a Xanax almost. It stimulates GABA receptors in your brain, causes relaxation. A lot of people have trouble falling asleep because they're anxious. And if you're taking a drug like trenbolone, it increases that anxiety tenfold. So GABA will relax you, allow you to fall asleep. Matter of fact, when you take GABA, you feel a little bit of almost like a nice and little rush, and then you know it's working. What I recommend people do is 3 pills of my Somalize about 15 to 20 minutes before bed. As soon as you feel that GABA rush, you lay down and you should be able to fall asleep. The problem is staying asleep, and that's where melatonin comes in. 3 milligrams a night of melatonin will keep you in a deeper sleep, a deeper REM sleep, better quality of sleep. You're going to get what's called paradoxical sleep, which is what cats get when they do these little cat naps. You can sleep for 3-4 hours, and it's like you slept for 6 hours. So that's why I like that combination prior to a contest, the GABA melatonin combo. It's like I said, melatonin is a very safe hormone. It's released by the pineal gland in the brain as nighttime comes around. Now, as we get a little older, we lose the ability to produce melatonin. That's why you see in elderly people, a lot of them sleep at weird hours because they don't know what night and dark is. Melatonin, when it's released at night, okay, when it gets dark, it tells your body it's nighttime sleep. Okay, if you were a nocturnal animal that was up during the day and slept during the night, the melatonin cycle in your body would be reversed. Okay, so as we get older and we produce less and less and less, we don't know, the body doesn't know what light and dark is anymore. So by taking melatonin at night, it's a great anti-aging type drug because it kind of resets your biorhythms. I use melatonin a lot. I bring my Somalize with me when I travel overseas to different time zones because it resets my clock. If I go to Europe and it's a 6-hour difference, when I go to sleep in Europe, I take 3 melatonin, 3 Somalize, and I completely have no problem. And then when I get back, I do the same thing for a couple days, and I get no jet lag. So, great substance.
Time for a couple of more questions. Beast Mode 128. What is the benefit of some bodybuilders consuming large amounts of sodium before a workout for a pump?
You know, a lot of bodybuilders don't take in enough sodium. And so, obviously, if you're prone to cramping, you feel very flat in the gym, dehydrated even maybe a little bit, but yet you're drinking enough water. It could be that you're just not consuming enough salt. A lot of people in today's society are so afraid of salt because they've demonized it as being this thing that causes high blood pressure. Eating a lot of salt in your diet doesn't cause high blood pressure, okay? High blood pressure is caused by family, genetic predisposition, by being too heavy. Certain drugs like trenbolone can cause, high blood pressure, stress, anxiety. There's a million reasons why you get anxiety, and one of them is not because you're eating salt. Now, if you do have severe high blood pressure and they have you on prescription diuretics that flush water and sodium out of your body, and you're putting sodium back into your body, you're actually negating what the diuretic is doing. And that's the only circumstance where you wouldn't want to consume salt in your diet. However, if you're not in that situation, okay, even if you're on an ACE inhibitor, blood pressure medication, eat as much salt as you want. Matter of fact, it's good to eat salt because your body needs salt as an electrolyte for muscle contraction and relaxation. If you don't have enough salt, you will cramp, you will have problems. I promise you, it happens to more people than you think. Especially when it's really hot outside and you're sweating a lot and you're losing a lot of electrolytes, you got to replace those. Don't restrict salt in your diet. The only time I ever restrict salt in my athletes' diets is the day before the show. And then I actually put it back at night. I only restrict it for about 18 hours.
Ed Montejo, Dave, who do you think will get the legacy of the greatest Egyptian bodybuilder of all time, Nasser or Big Ramy? Nasser clearly the better physique, but will Ramy's huge popularity in the sport leave him as the most looked up to Egyptian of all time in bodybuilding?
I think it all depends on, what Ramy does in the future. He's still obviously an active bodybuilder. His career really has just gotten started. If he wins an Olympia, obviously he'll be the most decorated Egyptian of all time. If he wins an Open Arnold Classic, same thing. Nasser won one Arnold Classic. He placed second at the Olympia, probably 97. He should have won. We've talked about that before. So right now, I would say Nasser is still more popular. Ramy is bigger. Obviously, he's got a crazy social media following. There was no social media when Nasser was around. But right now, I think Nasser's got the edge. Romney still has to, define his career, and he hasn't done that yet because he's just, like I said, he's only getting started. He really hasn't gotten out of his box yet. Once he starts winning titles, all over the place, and he's won shows before, but nothing like, never a major title. If he wins the Olympia or the Arnold USA, I think that'll put him into a different light.
Final question. This is a follow-up to a question that was asked to you either last episode or 2 weeks ago. At your peak, 300 plus pounds, you said you were eating 12 meals a day. On his question, how often were you running to the bathroom?
I was probably pooping 3 times a day, and it was probably a lot. And I probably should have pooped more, but sometimes, who knows? I think that's what it was. I don't even remember. I know I wasn't like pooping every 2 minutes or anything like that. I didn't have any kind of digestive issues. I used, toward the end of my career, I was using my fiber, or not mine, I was using a psyllium-based fiber supplement, and that was helping me to go pretty regularly. But, usually 3 times a day was about right. If I didn't go 3 times a day, I felt really backed up because I was eating a tremendous amount of food. It might have been more frequently than because I just don't remember. Because what happened was there was about, from the years of 1994, I'd say, or 3, to about 1997. That's when I was eating excessive amounts of food, trying to put the size on. Once I got to 96, 97, I kind of was where I needed to be. So I was still eating a lot, but I wasn't eating ridiculous. I wasn't like force feeding myself like I was before that. But up for those 5 years, I was. And those are the years that, like I said, maybe I just blocked them out on purpose. But, I would go, but more frequently than I do now, that's for sure. And there were bigger volume. But, I was using a lot of those nutrients. Think about it. I was eating a lot of food, but a lot of that was going to building and repairing muscles. So it wasn't like it was just being wasted on me. And I wasn't, the only time I really have really bad problems is if I ate like ice cream or things with a lot of lactose in it, because I was really lactose intolerant. And sometimes I just was in denial of that. And I'd be like, screw it, I want to have ice cream. I'm going to eat ice cream. And then I'd be on the toilet all night. So other than that, I had a pretty solid digestive system.
We have so many questions. I'm going to actually screenshot them and save them for the next episode, but I did want to squeeze this one last one in. It's from Excellent 187. Dave, I've heard you and other gurus say that you should always lift heavy, even when trying to get shredded during contest prep. If so, is there such a thing as a building workout or program when it seems like diet is the answer to both building mass or cutting?
I'm not really sure of the question. Is there a diet? Is that what you're asking me?
A mass building workout or program, basically regarding lifting heavy even during a contest prep.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to be as strong while you're dieting for a show, at least not toward the end, because you're going to be depleted, you're going to be glycogen depleted, you're going to be water depleted, you're going to feel a little run down, okay? But you should always lift as heavy as you can with good form. So if I'm squatting 600 pounds for 6 reps in the off season, but I really can't get it while I'm pre-contest, maybe I do 500 pounds for 6 reps. But it feels like it's 600 pounds, you understand? So I'm still getting the same benefit because my body is perceiving the weight as being super heavy. And that's how I trained. I wouldn't purposely lighten the weights when I would start contest dieting. I would keep them as heavy as possible that I can do with good form. And that seemed to work fine.
I'm sorry, a couple of these Olympia questions, I'll at least get one of them in because next week it's kind of old news. It's from Wyatt Law. It's evident that we've seen that it's not only the, quote, back that wins the show, as we've seen in this year's Olympia. Do you think that other competitors will come in smaller and tighter now, mostly thinking of Big Ramy and Rulli, or will they continue to stay mass monsters? Kind of going back to what you said earlier on about what they can only judge, which is on the stage, but do you think there's any credence to the trend that some of these competitors may follow for next year?
Look, you can only be who you are. The big guys are the big guys. The smaller guys are the smaller guys. The smaller guys are going to say, oh, it's about aesthetics and it's about, shape, and because, they're small. And the big guys are going to be like, look, it's about mass and conditioning and symmetry. You have to have all three because it behooves them to have that judging criteria because they're big. That's just the way it is, the guys that are the bigger guys want big. The guys that are small guys want the small, symmetrical look. The great thing is now you have classic physique, you have 212, you have open, so you have other divisions to go to if you don't like the direction that the division you're in is heading right now.
All right, I swear, one last question. This one is specific to Phil. Did Phil's hernia surgery fix anything? I've had triple hernia surgery, and my midsection looks identical to how it did before the surgery. Minus the scar, seems like the hernia was the scapegoat for the distended stomach.
Yeah, let me just tell you something. Phil's distended stomach was not being caused by a hernia. I know he tried to use that as an excuse to kind of mask whatever happened last year. He had an umbilical hernia. That little portion of his belly button that was popping out, that little button, that was fixed. They put mesh in there. And I think they put a lot of mesh in there because it looks like almost his lower abs are blurred out a little bit. I don't know if they put too much mesh in there or what, but I guess they wanted to make sure that the thing didn't open up. The actual fact that his stomach is sticking out, there's nothing they could do about that. That's, has to do with organs inside swelling, maybe because they're a little toxic. It also happens to have to do with, the actual fascia that this under the muscle. There's something called the fascia. It's like a connective tissue layer. It's when you opening up a turkey or a chicken, and you kind of peel back the skin, and there's that clear layer of something there. That's the fascia. That's what holds the muscle in. As we get older, that stretches out, just like in a pregnant woman. And when it stretches now, it's not keeping your stomach as flat and as taut to your body. It allows your stomach to kind of move, the musculature to kind of stick out and spread itself out a little bit. And that's what's happening in Phil. That's just an age-related thing. Nothing you can really do about it except work those muscles in the stomach using different exercises and different targets so that he can control the musculature down there. It has nothing to do with anything else.
That's going to do for this episode of Fast Save, again brought to you by Species Nutrition and Liquid Sun Rays. For our producer Tyler Shora, Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.